Right, we're going to jump into the this step by step. So I think the first thing, right, we want to align the business and the facility goals. So as we kind of go through these, I think it's crucial to best understand what's the most important for the different business units. Some considerations might be redundancy, it might be reliability, flexibility, humidity, how clean the space is. So I think kind of understanding what the goals are, and then going into like who's responsible, the roles and responsibilities we talk about. It might be, who's going to be impact and influence these planning. Is it the real estate arm? Is it the finance? They need to work with the finance team to go and say, this is what we got to do, this is when we got to do it, and like this is why we got to do it. So having those being aligned from the facilities group to the business group, and then obviously keeping the finance group in the mix too. It's important for all these different players to understand what they're doing and why they're doing it. The next step, right, is we talked about this before, is creating that asset list, kind of going through all the different equipment. How granular do you want to be? How detailed do you need to be to make sure that you're set up for success? So kind of going through that. So we have the list, and then kind of understanding what the priorities are, right? In how critical of the spaces are. You might have, as that business evolves, we talked about, they might need some more lab space and less office space. So baking that in, and then the system level, architecturally speaking, like how does different systems support different spaces? You don't want to have a 100% outside air, 2N redundancy serving an office space, just because that's what the space served before. So it's really crucial and important to really understand how the space is set up, what the systems are, how they differ, and then how they can, how you can have common systems serve both spaces, and how you need to make sure that you're not doing overkill just because that's what's in place. The next is assess equipment conditions.
Right. So jumping from, you're getting the complete asset list, as Fran just described, and think of it a little bit in a way as a kind of a property condition assessment, right? If you don't have a capital plan, one of the first things you need to do is create that list and then evaluate its condition. So a lot of times that is the predecessor to a good capital plan, is a property condition assessment. And what we use in addition to that property condition assessment, which is typically based on visual inspection, age and condition, we often like to, as I mentioned earlier, combine that with the, something like an energy audit or retro commissioning report. Because if you do those two things together, when you create the actual capital plan, when you assess the equipment before you start to categorize it, you have all the information to make better decisions. So more information obviously gives you a better platform foundation to make good decisions in the future. And one thing I like to talk about is this idea of making sure that you talk to all the staff. Fran and I do this all the time when we're working with our clients. Is we want to talk to everybody. We want to talk to the guy that changes the belts on the fans, or programs the BMS, and manages the dollars and uses the space. But the people that run the equipment are the ones that are closest to it. So making sure that we get a good understanding from them, how they feel, comfortable, not comfortable. And sometimes it's not even the age or condition. It might be they think it should operate differently. So sometimes a capital plan can give you an opportunity to make improvements. And we talk about this too as we spaces, right? So you got the criticality and the risk. And as I just said, sometimes it's, the good information you have to be able to get there. Sorry, Fran, I think I want to.
That's all right. We'll keep cruising along here. So we got so the next one is evaluate the criticality and risk factors here.
No, thank you. Sorry, I was jumping ahead on that. But so the idea being really that you have all that good baseline, and then you can take the good information that you have, you created it, you've interviewed everybody, you've created all the database, and then from there you can start to make the business decisions. You can start to decide what's critical to the business, what's critical to reliability, what's critical to safety, and understand where you can keep the plan really simple or where you need to keep the plan very complex. And a lot of times we talk about the risk and we need to reevaluate it every year because things change, right? Safety standards change, operations inside of the space change, might be R&D, so replaced a piece of equipment that has a higher risk or a more critical factor. Could be that the manufacturing has a lot more expensive operation, and that makes that a more critical business risk. So you need to make sure you're updating the what might have been simple last year may need to be very complex the next year. So updating for those criticality factors is real important.
Yeah, it's a great point. Right. We can jump into validate the key risk factors. So.
Yeah, no, I think the real point here is that there really isn't any order to this, right? So we've listed a bunch. There's probably a bunch more depending on your business and your specific building type. But if you start with this type of list, you'll be able to start to assess things and make sure that you're putting them in the right place. We talk a lot about safety and reliability because we want to make sure that people have a business that's successful, but the people that are in the space are safe. One of the things, story where we were asked to get involved in replacing some air handling units in the penthouse for a science space where they were doing some light manufacturing and testing, but it was critical environment space, temperature and humidity, and it was interesting because they budgeted the plan to replace the air handling units, and we asked them what the budget was, and they said it was X. And that was good to replace the air handling units, almost arguably on a rooftop or in a warehouse. But these particular air handling units were in a penthouse above occupied space, and the only way to get them out was to cut them up into tiny pieces with torches, or to cut a hole in the roof or cut a wall out in the penthouse and crane them out. And not only getting them out being the problem, putting the new ones in was the same type of problem. They didn't have a service elevator big enough to bring the rooftop units or the air handling units to the roof and then into the penthouse. And they had to put up a crane to do it. And so it was real expensive, and the added cost of tearing the wall apart, put it back up, and the crane, and then they had to, EH&S Group came in and said, well, you guys can't be in the building when this crane boom is swinging across. They just didn't allow that. It wasn't part of their safety standard. So they had to do it on a weekend. So now we got overtime and things like that. The cost of the replacement of the air handling units was about 5x the original cost budgeted. And so it was a real painful exercise for the client. It was very time consuming, a lot of disruption. So as we put plans together, we want to try and at least highlight all of these things. We want to make sure that, if we see something like that as part of the plan when you're doing the walkthrough, it's not just simply taking a piece of paper and making a list. You have to include all of these types of factors to make sure that everybody's going to get what they need in a timely way. And I think Julie said it well at the beginning. It can be very expensive to the industry if it's not planned well.
Yeah, and I think those are all great points and great stories, and then like thinking about the logistics of it and the business impact. So yeah, money's one thing, but impacting that business and how you're planning and operating, it's just very disruptive if you don't have that plan in place. So I think that's a great point. So we're going to jump into build that number 6, building a plan. So. Right, we talk about spending money over time and the proactive approach to capital budgets every single year. So I think you need just the planning ahead, especially for those big replacements. Those big replacements, you got to set that capital aside for to kind of build up to that plan. And then when you're developing the plan, the biggest thing that we see so much is, the year before you got to get your budgets, you got to get the capital planning budgets together, and you got to figure out what you're going to spend next year. And I know Ray made a great example of that replacement within the penthouse and taking down the wall. I mean, that's a real thing, and it happens in so many different ways. If that plan's not developed to a point where what the exposure is, that next year it could go sideways really quickly, and it's not a fun day for anybody. It's disruptive, it costs money, you have to go ask for more funding. So just really getting ahead of that and planning ahead, because some of that legwork, that due diligence and feasibility studies, that work needs to get done anyways, and you're less than 12 months away from doing the work. So doing it the year before when you're coming up with those budgets is crucial. It's one of the most, if you take away anything, I want you to take away this, because it's just, I think coming up with that and understanding what needs to get done, what are the auxiliary pieces of equipment? Do I need to touch structure? Is it controls? This is it power? It's not just replacing an air handle. There's so many different components and considerations. So doing those up front is super important.
I think that's really good. And oftentimes we talk about the devil's in the details, and those are the things you're talking about, right? It's the things you touch that aren't directly connected, right? That are indirectly connected. And we also talk about this idea that we get into sometimes people talk, is it 10 years, is it 20-year plan? What's the plan? And I sometimes use the analogy that like when my kids, I started saving for their college. I should have saved more every year before they started college. But if you don't save based on your energy savings, or you don't put that money in the account to build the capital for these replacements at the time it needs to happen, you can fall behind on a budget. So I know everybody doesn't have direct impact or direct control over the budget, but kind of reminding the people that do, the finance people, the CEO, that the capital plan needs to be funded. So there's just this continuous evolution of it that's real important, and that is a key to a good plan.
Yeah, that's good stuff, Ray.